Lola, who's the expert hacker here.
Yes.
We get to the bottom of what's happening, and they have some leverage, and they enter into the settlement negotiations.
Yes.
Before this, there was some back and forth in settlement negotiations, and ultimately, what's happening in a settlement? So people are trying to resolve the dispute before it proceeds to trial.
Yeah, they're assessing their relative likelihood of success at trial,
Exactly.
the cost of going to trial, and weighing that against, the losses or gains that could be won or lost at trial. Maybe one step aside here. In the middle of this negotiation, the Harvey-Lewis duo is on its back foot, with Lewis taking some bad actions, trying to flip a witness.
Yeah.
And he gets caught, and then, they decide they're going to lower the settlement offer in connection with Lewis, almost using that bad action as a way to lower it.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts to that?
So this is a tricky situation. Basically, incorporating new bad information and then lowering the settlement as a result makes sense, right?
Yeah,
but
your leverage changed.
Your leverage changed. And I think that this show Suits does a great job incorporating leverage and relative leverage, and showing possible outcomes as a result. Maybe played a little bit fast and loose with the fact that this is potentially blackmail or extortion.
Yeah, or even better, the client shouldn't receive a lower settlement because of malfeasance.
Great point.
Yeah, by the attorney. I think that's, for me, that was the thing that was ringing the most true, which is like the fact that he maybe tampered with a witness or extorted someone or blackmailed someone. That claim shouldn't impact this settlement negotiation.
To the point that I think you would have an incredibly strong legal malpractice case against the firm for exactly $7.5 million.
And you would absolutely move Lewis out of that trial, that claim.
Yeah.
One of the other pieces about the settlement negotiation that I thought was kind of interesting, and I'd love to get your take on, is they lowball, let's call it a lowball offer, Harvey and Lewis, without the client in the room. And Harvey says, there's no way we are going to take that offer, walks out of the room, but then also says to the client, I have to disclose the offer to you. Break that down for me a little bit.
Yeah. So you wouldn't be able to turn the offer down in the room without already having authority from the client.
Okay.
You have a duty to convey offers to the client. The attorney, generally speaking, is responsible for legal strategy and making legal decisions, whereas the client is the ultimate decider of, these substantive decisions, like whether or not that's an outcome that they want to take.
They may weigh heavily the lawyer's opinion.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you have a good lawyer that you trust, or somebody you are willing to hire in the first place, I would strongly advise considering their opinion on the matter. But at the end of the day, it's going to be the client's call.
Totally.
And so he would have an obligation to convey the offer, which they showed. He wouldn't have the ability to just tell them no flat out, again, unless he had prior authorization from the client. So he could have gotten, you have no authority to accept an offer below X amount, or, put it to your judgment, but you have authority to accept any offer above Y amount.
Yeah. So I guess to me, it's just interesting, like the dance they're playing there, who has authority in litigation matters. It probably feels a lot like the lawyer is in charge, but ultimately the client is in charge of these kind of substantive decisions. One
other thing that came up here was this intertwining of the criminal and the civil matter yet again. And so at the ultimate resolution, they settled the case for $150 million.
Yep.
I would argue that's even cheap. I think that at this point there was the lost use of the funds. There were,
attorney's fees to recover it.
Yeah. There are all of these damages exceeding $150 million. To put them in the position they were before these funds were embezzled, $150 million isn't going to cut it.
Agreed.
So setting that aside, as they settle the case for $150 million, they address the criminal charges.
Yeah.
Did you have any thoughts here?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately the criminal side, the crime is against the state or the people of the US if it's a federal crime, or the people of New York if it's a New York crime. So the civil litigant doesn't really have the same authority to tell, the prosecutor's office, don't go after this crime. The prosecutor may take that under advisement. They may say, hey, we don't have a this person may not cooperate as a witness. They don't really want to do it. So what's the purpose behind going after these people? But the prosecutor may say, these criminals are out there doing it to other people. We need to stop this action from happening. Even though this person felt like they were made whole, it doesn't mean that either the other people who potentially could be being defrauded or embezzled are getting their money back, or that in the future these people may not feel emboldened to act to take those criminal actions.
Absolutely. And you even get into a situation where you potentially have issues with extortion or bribery by claiming that you would set aside, or you would otherwise, tank the criminal prosecution against them.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah, and that's a real issue that comes up. And so the intertwining these two issues is very messy. They don't have any authority to not bring criminal charges. The prosecutor would certainly consider whether or not restitution has already been made, or if they made the person whole and they'd tried to undo their wrongdoing. But yeah, exactly. It's ultimately not within their control.
There's one final point that I'd like to get your take on, which is the we alluded to it earlier, the Lewis Harvey relationship. It felt like it was closing.
So close.
It was so close. At the very end, Harvey's giving Lewis credit, and then they walk out and Lewis said, "You were in there taking all the credit from me." And Harvey responds with something like, "You would do that, and that's your problem."
Yeah. He's first defensive and says it's absolutely not what I did.
Yeah.
And we saw the scene immediately preceding that where he was in fact giving Lewis credit. Yeah. And there was this kumbaya moment where you thought it was going to be
great. We thought we'd done it.
And Lewis was walking down the hallway, being incredibly charismatic, and you thought he'd kind of warmed up to the world a little bit. And yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that line. Stuck out to me, and I think was it was great writing and showed a lot of insight into the human condition, where it's oh, he's just so horribly suspicious of the world because that's what he would do.
Yeah. To be honest though, even though it feels like, they didn't actually convene, it gives the opening for because Harvey doesn't just absolutely admonish him. It gives the opening for him to be like, oh, you're right, I should be viewing this differently.
Yeah, totally. And so I'm curious to see how that plays out, but